It is the spring of 1918. World War I is blazing across Europe with a violence mankind has never known before. For 2 million American soldiers, this war is their ordeal by fire. And a great burden rests on the shoulders of the man who leads them. In the past, he has fought Indians and Mexican bandits. But now he must lead American troops onto the battlefields of France in a conflict that will decide the course of world history. His name is John J. Pershing, and this is his biography. I'm Mike Wallace, and this is Biography. Our story, General of the Army's John J. Pershing. Only one other man has ever held that rank, George Washington. But the men of Pershing's army gave him a less official, though no less telling title. They called him Blackjack because he was a soldier by the book, a trait that won him the respect and admiration of his men, though rarely their deepest affection. It was this very toughness and Pershing's rigid independence which helped to shape the modern American army, helped make the United States the leading military power of our century. This is the AEF, the American Expeditionary Force, the United States Army of World War I. It grew from a ragged, poorly equipped standing army into a mighty legion of citizen soldiers. One man prepared them for combat. One man sent them into battle. He was John J. Pershing, the only six-star general in modern history. Yet in the beginning, he had not wanted to become a soldier. This is Laclede, Missouri, where John Joseph Pershing is born on September 13, 1860. He grows up in the rolling countryside of northern Missouri. Throughout his life, he will think of America in terms of these rich, fertile fields where he spends his boyhood. Young John is the first of 9 Pershing children. From his parents, he inherits the strong moral fiber of pioneer settlers, their respect for the Bible and their love of the land. When his father's store fails, John takes up farming to support the family. But he already has his heart set on another career. He dreams of becoming a lawyer. He's admitted to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point after winning competitive exams in his home state. West Point, for him, is a stepping stone to a career in law, a golden opportunity for a free education. Cadet Pershing has no intention of becoming a career soldier. He is only a fair student whose most difficult subject is French. He gets his best grades in military studies, and he becomes cadet captain in his senior year, the Academy's top military honor. On graduation day in 1886, John Pershing makes a critical decision. His law career is temporarily put aside. He decides to serve his term in the Army, feeling that he has a moral obligation to pay for his years of free schooling. Cadet Pershing becomes Lieutenant Pershing. Assignment, the United States 6th Cavalry. The Frontier Army of 1886 is made up of career troopers. Lieutenant Pershing quickly learns that an officer must be a ramrod to enforce discipline among these troopers. 9 years later, he's assigned to the University of Nebraska as an instructor of military studies. In his spare time, he finally earns his prized law degree. But he slowly realizes that the Army has become too much a part of him to quit now. For John Pershing, this is the real beginning of his career as a soldier. 1898, the battleship Maine explodes and sinks in Havana Harbor. The nation is swept into war with Spain. A handful of regular Army soldiers begins the invasion of Spanish-held Cuba, and Lieutenant John Pershing is among them. So is Colonel Theodore Roosevelt, leading his famous volunteers, the Rough Riders. The adventurous colonel and the young lieutenant are friends. They fight together in the decisive battle for San Juan Hill. He returns to Washington for staff duty in 1903. He meets and marries Helen Frances Warren. It is the first of two important events for Captain John Pershing. Theodore Roosevelt is America's dynamic chief executive. Disgusted with an Army promotion system that stifles young officers, he rocks the military world in dramatic fashion. Selecting a deserving officer, he promotes the man from the rank of captain to the rank of brigadier general. The man he chooses, John Pershing. From obscurity, Pershing is lifted to the Army's top echelon. The man who didn't want to be a soldier is now a general. During his next 7 years in command of a Philippine garrison, his personal life is fruitful and happy. There are 3 children in his family and a 4th on the way. Recalled to the United States for special duty on the Mexican border, Pershing leaves his family in San Francisco. The Army is on alert. A bandit named Pancho Villa has been leading savage raids against Texas border towns. Villa calls himself a patriot, the defender of Mexican sovereignty. But in reality, he's a vicious outlaw. There seems to be no way to stop Villa. His men loot, burn, and plunder frontier towns, and then slip back to the safety of Mexican territory. General Pershing can only stand by and wait for orders to follow Villa across the border. Meanwhile, he's found a home for his family. They're due to join him in just 1 week, when suddenly his wife and 3 of his children die in a fire that sweeps their home. Only his infant son survives. The shock of this tragedy nearly destroys Pershing. He is a changed man, withdrawn from the people around him. He hides his grief behind a cold, impersonal mask. His hair turns white almost overnight. At this moment, word comes from Washington. General Pershing is ordered to chase, find, and capture Pancho Villa. It is the beginning of a hopeless goose chase through the mountains and deserts of Mexico. Finally, on January 30th, 1917, Washington calls off the campaign. Pershing and his men are ordered home. There is a new kind of war raging in Europe. A war of tanks, planes, poison gas, machine guns, and long-range cannon. Watching his men, Pershing knows the American Army is far behind the times. Its equipment and training methods date back to the Civil War. But on April 6, 1917, President Woodrow Wilson signs America's declaration of war. Recruits come from New England and the far west, from Dixie and the border states, in every shape, in all sizes. This is the beginning of a brand new army. The recruits rehearse for battle with wooden rifles. An army lacking tanks and machine guns gives its men lessons in the rules of good sportsmanship. training camps a proud but inexperienced fighting force. Whatever terror war holds is swept aside by the stirring send-off of an aroused nation. The enormous responsibility of commanding this American expeditionary force is entrusted to Major General John Pershing. No other officer was ever given more responsibility than this general. The lives of 2 million men, the future of the United States, rests on his ability, his judgment. For John Pershing, the great adventure begins. World War I is in its third year. The exhausted armies of France and England grimly battle the Germans in a deadlocked combat. Allied troops are drained of the will to fight, and so they hold the line, protecting Paris and the English Channel. American troops arriving in France bring new life, new spirit to a shattered continent. The mere sight of these fresh new troops gives the French people renewed hope. A simple statement is made, but it echoes across all of France. Lafayette, we are here. The British and French high commands, however, welcome Pershing with restraint. His troops are unknown quantities, and their effectiveness in this war is doubtful. The English and the French give Pershing to understand that this is their war, to be fought as they plan it. Marshal Foch, Supreme Allied Commander, wants American troops used only as replacements for the French army. Politely but firmly, Pershing opposes the Allied leaders. The American army will fight, he says, as a separate and distinct unit under American command. He must gamble that France and England can hold out until enough Americans can be properly trained for combat. Pershing's first battle has taken place in the dangerous jungles of European diplomacy. While General Pershing buys time at the conference table, his men train in the fields. Doughboys by the thousands are exposed to the tactics of trench war. They are taught to defend themselves against the silent threat of poison gas. They must become experts with the new weapons of World War I. During the training, Pershing seems to be everywhere at once, snapping out orders, correcting faults, demanding perfection. They call him Blackjack, a driving taskmaster, constantly setting higher and higher standards. To the citizen soldiers, he's a remote figure sweeping by in a staff car. But if he doesn't win their affection, he inspires their confidence. He is a source of strength to an entire army. March 21st, 1918, the greatest crisis of World War I begins. The German army has launched the spring offensive along a 40-mile front. 200 German divisions move forward under cover of a massive artillery barrage. The Allied front cracks, and the Germans sweep for Paris. Pershing offers a few American units to help stem the tide. They fight under the command of British and French officers. Cantigny, Belleau Wood, Chateau Thierry. Through the spring of 1918, American troops distinguished themselves in the lines. Fighting with the French and British units, they shatter the German offensive, stop it dead in its tracks. General Pershing now offers Marshal Foch the support of the entire American army, but there is no reply. Foch refuses to believe Pershing's army is capable of holding its own. He still wants piecemeal replacement of French and British troops by American units. Without the consent of Marshal Foch, Pershing takes matters into his own hands. He announces to the world that the American army is ready for war. Foch has no choice, and he reluctantly accepts Pershing's offer. Pershing tells his army, Germany can be beaten, Germany must be beaten, Germany will be beaten. It is the war cry of an American army, going to battle under American command. Pershing commits the power of his nation to the hardest fighting of World War I. His army will attack the German salient at Saint-Mihiel, the major roadblock to an Allied victory. September 22nd, 1918. The doughboys move up to the forests of the Argonne. On November 11th, 1918, the doughboys receive word that the war to end all wars is over. President Wilson arrives in Europe to sign the peace treaty. Pershing's success has earned the nation a voice in post-war planning. For this, he wins the gratitude of the president and of the entire country. He has proven America's strength and given the United States a powerful hand in world affairs. Black Jack Pershing is going home, and he says a last goodbye to Marshal Foch. Between them is a bond of respect and admiration, a bond that goes beyond political intrigue and rivalry. They have shared the great adventure. Sailing to the States, Pershing learns the most gratifying of all tributes has been given him. He has been named General of the Armies, the first man to hold that rank since George Washington. He relaxes for the first time in 5 years. He even clowns with his staff. As far as America is concerned, World War I is John Pershing's personal victory, and Americans are eager to shower him with the acclaim he richly deserves. He leads his homecoming troops down the main boulevards of the United States. On his 64th birthday, September 13, 1924, General Pershing retires from active duty. He has repaid the nation many times for the free education he received at West Point 40 years before. The farmer, lawyer, soldier, and general now becomes a world traveler, living out the autumn of his life. He returns to Europe each year to pay tribute to his soldiers, to recall the memories of incredible valor, and to remind the world of the terrible price of war. At home, he makes his name and his services available to charities and special causes. Even now, his words are laced with the language of a soldier.
This is a wonderful program. I am sure that you will soon have the enemy in full retreat. And I'm very happy to buy my share of the ammunition to make war against this dreadful disease of tuberculosis.
There is an old rivalry between John Pershing and photographers. He dislikes the constant posing. In answer to official requests, he says, "To hell with the War Department. I don't like having my picture taken." But on rare occasions, like his 79th birthday, he sometimes relents. In 1938, ominous clouds of another world war are forming, and Pershing carries his message of preparedness to the country.
Reassuring. Loyal citizens cannot shut their eyes to the possibility of war, and while making the most earnest efforts to preserve peace in the world, they owe it to all that is sacred to us to make ample preparation against an evil day.
But in these troubled times, a retired general of the armies can only lend vocal support. May 1940, President Roosevelt calls General Pershing to the White House. He is awarded the Distinguished Service Cross by a grateful nation for his lifelong service. He earnestly offers his services once again, and the president replies, "Pershing, you're magnificent." But younger men must fight this war. There is no place for an aging general. On July 15, 1948, John Pershing dies in his sleep at the age of 88. His body lies in state in the Capitol Rotunda in Washington. Generations who know him only as a legend join his men, his veterans, to offer a last salute. General Dwight Eisenhower and General Omar Bradley lead the funeral procession through Washington's rain-swept streets. General of the Army is John J. Pershing. His name will always stand for the finest in American military tradition. An ironic epitaph for the man who never wanted to become a soldier. General John J. Pershing was a tough and leathery man, a proud and independent soldier, the determined leader of a powerful fighting force. But he had foresight, too, and he helped to shape America's concept of a strong peacetime military establishment, dedicated not to making war, but to keeping peace. Mike Wallace for Biography.